For thousands of kilometers, from Altai Mountains to Caspian Sea, spreads our motherland, Kazakhstan. Adapting to living in miscellaneous landscapes, the ancestors of Kazakhs had been creating unique culture, mythology, and art closely related to the motherland nature. Each episode of the program, constantly operating tele-expedition The Legend Hunters, takes you to one of the most legendary places of our country. Along with our film crew, you will learn ancient myths and get a foretaste of touristic Kazakhstan's modern capabilities.
Путешествие по западному Казахстану продолжается от Аральского моря.
After learning the legends of the Aral, our expedition set to cover the next section of route of a large-scale journey to the western borders of the Republic. There is a vast deserted space between the Aral Sea and the Caspian Sea called Ustyurt Plateau. In ancient time, the north branch of the Silk Road passed through this plateau. A caravan could cover up to 25 kilometers per daylight hours. But then, the people and the pack animals needed rest and drinking water. That is why all along the way, that is every 25 kilometers, there were caravanserais with wells and cribs. Incredibly, traces of some caravanserais remained until today. The trade missions covered the 600 kilometers road from the western coastline of the Aral to the eastern coastline of the Caspian Sea in 25-30 days. How much time will it take for the modern travelers? The Legend Hunters decided to check that. The expedition starts from the western shore of the Aral Sea. Then they have to cross the eastern chink of the Ustyurt, sandy desert Большие Барсуки, Takır-Mınjılkı Saksaul, find a narrow pass between the north chink and Sorsam, and finally get to the shore of the Caspian Sea. They should come across several wells. The old graphic maps contain markers of routes, and the satellite navigation provides shots of the region made from the space. But anyway, the travelers crack their head on every cross of the desert roads to decide which way to go. There are hardly any landmarks. Maybe they existed in ancient time.
Официальной датой рождения Великого Шелкового пути
The period between 138–126 before Christ is considered to be the date of the Silk Road establishment, when a Chinese monk diplomat, Zhang Xin, sent by Emperor Wu of Han, made a journey to the west. The purpose of the journey was military and political. But on returning after the journey of several years standing, the monk first off suggested the emperor a promising commercial idea: to sell silk to the barbarians of the West. The thing is that the silk cloths at the time were the only recovery facilities for people from the insects, so they were valued in Europe and Asia.
И очень ценились среди аристократии западных стран.
Over thousands of years, the Silk Road had undergone many changes. Its northernmost branch, covering the territories of modern Aktobe, Atarau and Mangostau regions, emerged in 6th-7th centuries, during the epoch of the Turkic Khaganate. That was the time when the 2 centuries war had been flaring between Byzantium and the Persian dynasty of Sassanids. Their main goal was to gain control over the Silk Road. By the end of the 6th century, the Persians blocked the passes to the south of Aral, but the Greeks started to use a new way through Ustyurt and Volga region. It was the Caspian scholar and polymath Al-Biruni who mentioned the Ustyurt plateau in connection with the Silk Road for the first time in the 10th century. In his famous treatise, The Kanun of Al-Masudi, Al-Biruni reported that the Silk Road's route had run through the Ustyurt plateau to the Shetpinsky Gates and the Caspian Sea. Great kingdoms fall, and whole nations go into oblivion, but the Silk Road's ways are unchangeable, wrote Biruni. The caravans that passed through these lands thousands of years ago were truly large. The scholar recorded that in 922, a caravan that numbered 3,000 pack camels and about 5,000 merchants proceeded through Mangostau from Baghdad to Bulgaron Kama. The merchants hired the armed guard. Dervishes, missionaries, strolling poets and philosophers joined the caravan along the way of going. That is why the purpose of the caravan delegations did not confine itself just to trade function. Various ideas, religious concepts, scientific discoveries and, of course, legends of the Eastern people had been spreading out via the Silk Road. At that cruel time, the travelers faced many dangers, and often they did not hesitate to let loose their imagination while narrating their adventures. That is how the blood-curdling legends had been bearing. For example, the stories about Jasternaks, who pierced the hearts of travelers dozed off by a campfire with a long copper claw, or about Jalmaus Kemper witches, who turned into beautiful women and decoyed naive travelers into waterless sands. This story is very similar to the Greek myths about the sirens of the sea. The people of these lands still remember the legend about one-eyed ogre Karaman, who threw rocks as large as a camel at the travelers from the tops of the chinks. The insidious Karaman was killed by a hero of a Turkic epos, Alpamis, who had some resemblant features with another hero of the Greek myths, Achilles. The legend has it that the Arwah, that is the spirit, gifted Alpamis invincibility at birth. Some legends say that Alpamis also possessed magic power. The invincible warrior shaman buckled not only the mortals, but also made a journey to the country beyond the maritime borders, into the land of the dead. At that time, when the seamanship in Central Asia had been just developing, voyage beyond the Caspian Sea had been considered to be available only for the sorcerers. Another Kalakalpak legend has it that Khoja Ahmed Yasawi turned the evil and greedy Bai Karaman into a man-eating dog. An image of man-eating dog have indurated in the sub-Aral and is often used in fairy tales and legends. In the end of 1980s, the first Soviet horror film The Dogs was shot here.
Многочисленные артефакты ушедших эпох.
Numerous artifacts of the gone epochs testify that there were many permanent settlements along the caravan road.
Возникает вопрос, почему люди...
But why did people prefer the extremely hard road through the desert to places with more favorable climate? The answer to this question apparently lies in the sphere of geography and meteorology, rather than in the sphere of history. According to the modern investigations, the amplitude of the Caspian Sea level fluctuation in the last 1,000 years reached hundreds of meters. The climate has been changing correspondingly.
Появлялись и исчезали родники, и вероятно, что в средние века этот путь был не таким тяжелым, как сейчас.
The climate of these lands in the Middle Ages probably was more humid and quite suitable for normal life. Traces of ancient waterfalls and channels prove that. People still remember the legend about a dried-up river Ustyurt, which, according to the Middle Age authors, had been falling into the Caspian Sea till the 16th century. Although most of the contemporary geologists believe that Ustyurt had dried up much earlier, around 2,000–3,000 years ago. Ancient settlement traces along the dried-up riverbed had also been a reason for legend's creation. The expedition reached the Karatub Peninsula. The cars crossed the former Tushibas Creek by dried-up sea bottom and get deeper into the desert. The north chink of the Ustyurt stretches for hundreds of kilometers along the western shore of the Aral. Chinks are the ledges of the flat-top plateaus, formed from sedimentary strata of the receded sea. The desert of this land is not lifeless. The travelers can find water here, especially during the cold season. The water in the found artesian well did not turn out to be ice cold, but of room temperature, and it had a slight reddened smell. What a pleasure to take a warm shower in a long journey with limited facilities. And here is the first significant object, an old cemetery. Cemeteries are usually located not far from the settlements, but there are no signs of any. Among the burial places we may find both ancient graves and rather fresh ones of the Soviet period. And it is quite explainable. In Soviet time, the Communist Party had taken a course for distant animal husbandry intensification. They planned to increase the livestock number every year. As a result, people started to inhabit the unpopulated lands.
В советские времена, даже в самых отдаленных уголках пустыни,
They drilled in artesian wells and brought herds of cattle to the most distant corners of the desert. At the turn of the 80s, the military men massed in the region after a series of nuclear underground tests, codenamed Mangyshlak Sayutyos, got actively involved in the well drilling. But after the country's economy changed to a market economy, many distant animal husbandry posts turned out to be unprofitable, and people left their places. Only the cemeteries and abandoned wells remained.
Остались вот только старые могилы и развалины зимовок.
"600 kilometers of harsh desert are left behind. The expedition reached the seashore. Traditionally, the travelers have to soak their warhorses' hooves in the transparent waters of the Caspian Sea. The route that our ancestors could cover in 3 weeks, the modern iron horses covered in 3 days. New horizons are ahead of the legend hunters."